Well, good morning. Hello.
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 And are we doing the hello? Welcome to Guardians of M365 Governance, episode 15.
Today's episode.
Episode 15, folks. Here we are.
Ooh.
This series, it's a monthly webcast focused on the rapidly evolving and expanding Microsoft 365 governance story. Microsoft does stuff. They release new features, new products. We always ask the question, like, what's the governance story? How is this going to impact things? Because there's always an impact. So our goal is to share insights, best practices, and the latest information about new governance features and capabilities within Microsoft 365. And so we are dedicated to everything governance within M365 ecosystem. So if you have questions or comments or thoughts on what we should cover or guests, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, reach out to us. Let us know. And for this 15th episode, well, I guess before we jump into that, What are you guys doing? I guess we could talk a bit here.
We could talk. I mean, we survived St. Patrick's Day.
We did.
That's an accomplishment.
I haven't really celebrated. I love to celebrate it, going to an Irish pub, but this year it was not on my mental to-do list.
Never too late, Ragnar.
Yeah.
See, I haven't got my green fingernails rocking. Look at that.
Wow, that's impressive. You have really, yeah.
I just have to remember to wear I don't think I own any green clothing other than socks. Lots of green.
Make sure people can see them, or you don't want to get pinched.
Yeah. Oh, I have that sock collection that is, where I'm wearing suits. So for church every Sunday, where my wife's like, "Oh no, what socks are you wearing?" So I have that collection of socks.
Not the socks police. Do you have Excel socks?
I'm sorry?
Excel, like the logo socks?
I do not. But I did see, aren't the Archie socks from Orchestra, aren't those green?
I don't have them in here, but yes.
Yes, I just saw them in Michael Pisarik, for the CEO of Orchestra. He shared a picture of those Archie socks, and I commented. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, they're nice too. They're thick, they're soft, they're nice. We did not spare the pennies on the swag socks.
Plus, there's Archie on there, so
obviously,
yeah.
But I've just discovered that St. Patrick's Day is not is in the future and not in the past. It's on the 17th.
Yeah, of the date. No, it's so that that's what it just happened, Ragnar. Because this is not, it's the whole
where am I
live versus recorded thing. Yeah. So yeah, because we're totally live.
Totally.
I need a Guinness.
Yeah.
Every day. It's a good way to start the day.
Is it live or is it live? I say we live.
We live live, baby.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into it. So I don't know, Joy, would you like to introduce our guest this month?
Yes. So I'm very excited about this. Matthew Burrell is a fantastic consultant with your 365 coach. I know him through Orchestra. I guess we've been colleagues now in the space for a little over a year. I think I've had the opportunity to work with him, and we had an opportunity to come up where we needed a guest, because we need a guest every month, like clockwork.
Well, we've got stuff planned. We've got some interesting guests that are lined up.
I know, it's fabulous, and Matthew is one of those. He shares my passion for SharePoint Intranets. I know that's a conversation all of us could talk about all day long, every day. So
with your therapist, why you're passionate about intranets. That's a therapist discussion.
Oh, sometimes consulting is corporate
obsession.
Therapy.
Yeah.
Addiction.
It's true. It's true.
All right. Well, let's welcome him to the stage here.
Yes, Matthew.
Push that around.
And tell me if I said your name correctly.
Yeah, you did. You did a fantastic job, Joy. Thank you very much. And a passion for SharePoint Intranets, and I admit it. First way to start improving is to admit
This is a safe space.
You can't recover if you don't recognize the problem. So, yes. So we've got a great. So I kind of titled this episode is "Governance Essentials for SharePoint Intranet Success." And so why don't we start there? Like Matthew, like give some of your background and around the governance story perspective, because nobody goes in with the intent at the beginning, like I'm going to go out there and talk about and think about governance around this intranet. It's one of those things that most people find themselves thinking about, talking about once they've experienced some pain.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Intranet, particularly SharePoint Intranet governance, is learnt through scars, and you know, I think that is the role of every troop who's trudging back from the front is to help the next lot when they're making their move. So I've worked around SharePoint. Well, the dinosaurs walked the earth, and the content editor web part existed. So it's a while.
You just dated.
Yeah. It's my regime. You would never know.
Never know.
But so I'm not from a tech background. My history, my heritage is through internal communications, and then hence why my passion for an intranet. And so very often SharePoint is the intranet offer, because that's what an organization has got. There's no budget for something else. And actually, in this day and age, there doesn't need to be a budget for something else, because SharePoint can do a really good job.
I'm on a call later today talking about Viva Engage, formerly known as Yammer. Those folks would disagree with you that there's no other needs out there, but yes.
And I think Viva Engage, a great product, but where it really helps, particularly from a governance point of view, is it takes the pressure off your SharePoint intranet. It's SharePoint is what it says on the tin. It's a point to share things, and it's a point to put that golden source of information for your organization. But it's not a social network platform. That's we know that. So if you can take that expectation from your user community and from your stakeholders, that's not what happens here. That happens over here on this tool. Then that makes your governance and your success of your intranet so much easier. And I'm smug because I know behind Viva Engage there is a SharePoint site that makes all that thing happen in the background. So ultimately, SharePoint wins. So
it's not a competition. We all rise together.
SharePoint has no competition. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Well, again, go back to kind of what was your introduction like, or I don't know if you could give us any details of some of the pains that you felt where you started down that path of, we need to go and clean up our overall governance.
Well, you see, SharePoint and the governance up until the latest version, they never really needed to sort each other out, because every 2 to 3 years you had this seismic event that you had SharePoint 2010. All of a sudden, you then needed to upgrade to 2013. And that was kind of like the firewall that said, oh, well, do you know what? Our intranet was a complete mess anyway, so we're going to have a new intranet. And you're going to take this opportunity and we'll clean it up. And then everyone would say at that point, and we're going to be really good citizens, and it's never going to happen again.
Of course.
Then,
yes.
Now 2016 has come out. Oh, it's come out just in time, because look at the state of our intranet, and we need a new intranet. This is and it was just a repeating event. But we're now in this world where you don't ever upgrade your SharePoint. It's there, and it's upgrading itself every day you go in, and something's moved, or something new's appeared, or something you relied on for years has disappeared. And so that's where where your governance now really has to play a part, because you've not really got something that you can afford to just can the whole thing and start again. That's not in line with how the product works. So organizations have to change to adopt this. But intranet governance, particularly SharePoint intranet governance, is lovely. I fell into it because I could foresee that as an intranet manager, I was going through this pain every 3 to 4 years, but it didn't need to be this way. Why could we not get it to a point where it just kept evolving as it does? And that's what a good governance plan for an intranet is there to do, because it's not. Why I really like it is because I like working with people. I get tech, I enjoy tech, but I really enjoy when I can bring tech to people, and they can go away and they can create something, or they can they can make that portal so people stop asking them questions. They can present their really important policies so that people can actually do what they want them to do, what they've tried to do. And so the elements of the governance in Internet, particularly SharePoint Intranet, is there's probably 30% tech in there about what things are we going to use, how are we going to use this, how are we going to structure this stuff. But then the rest is about behaviors and cultures, and how are you going to commit to this? IT have paid some licenses, and that's got you this product, and we've designed some templates, and that's got you to this point. But how are you going to take this and run with it and keep running with it? Because the rest of your organization is hanging on this for them to be able to do their jobs.
Have you ever had to fight the battle where governance got the bad rap? I know when I was taking over an intranet at a large organization in the DoD infrastructure, that was fun, many moons ago, governance was seen as basically a set of rules that says, no, you can't do this.
Yeah.
And I got to a point, even when I was my early days of consulting, I was like, okay, we're going to talk about the G word, because you didn't dare say it out loud because it had such a bad rap. Have you had to go through that? And how did you bring it back to, this is a good thing for everyone, trust me?
Well, I wish I knew who had told me this, this saying, because I've used it so many times, that if you want to have a car and you want to go really fast, Joy, I know you'll like this one. If you want a car and you want to go very, very fast in it, you could invest in the engine to make that happen. But actually, because you've got like an invested need and want to get out of that car again, actually, if you're going to go really fast, you probably need to invest in the brakes, because you don't have to use the brakes, but they're really handy if you start to veer off to one side, or the car starts making a funny noise. You can use them to slow yourself down, get your momentum again. What's going on here? That's what was the problem. Let's fix that, and then have another go at it. And in intranet governance, that is, I think, is a pretty good comparison, because what people want to do is be able to create content, share content, and get people accessing their intranet sites, and they want to do it at pace. It's very, very often in a project, the end communication bit is a really small window of time, because not all, but most projects get close to that deadline, and you find that's only when you know what you can tell people. So you then have to find a way to tell people. If there's no guardrails, if you like, for how you then operate in the intranet, that makes it really hard. Who do I contact to get this stuff on the internet? Whose responsibility is it to do this? And so by having that, and I would say documented, there's probably some much more funky ways of doing it now, but I still live in a world that there is a tome that sits on the internet of this. We use this tech, we do that tech. We've got these intra groups that control access, and we've got these people that control the development or enhance the development. So I think that's why, and it's not about no, because intranet is really, it's that really nice niche of proper community developers, people who step forward to take responsibility for their team or their department, for their intranet space. And the governance document around that isn't, you're not reinventing the wheel. It's often going out and just pulling the bits together that you need. And this is probably one of the pain points, because I think you asked me a question, and like a politician, I completely ignored it and talked about other things. But the pain point, I think, with intranet governance is where the outside world doesn't exist properly. So if I give you some examples, you don't want to overshare information on your intranet, and
that's what social media is for. Overshare.
Yeah, exactly. Put it outside, but don't put it on your intranet. Right. But and in an intranet governance plan, you can't really describe what oversharing is, because that's not the role of the intranet governance plan. But if you haven't got any kind of information management principles in your organization, then you've got nothing to link back to. So, if you've got a really nice principle that defines your documents into public domain, maybe internal open access, internal confidential, that gives you a really nice lever point for your intranet. So you would say, we never share anything more sensitive than internal on our intranet, and there that person's got a real, they've got something they can stick to. They look at the document, it says restricted. Well, I'm not gonna upload that to the intranet, and their decisions made. So that's not a no. That's a because we do it like this because of this policy. The other one is the look and the feel. Your intranet, it's got to sound authentic. It's got to represent your organization, or people who are new will be confused by it, and people who are there won't believe it as a trusted source of information. If you go onto your intranet and it's got 3 corporate logos back and full of typos, you probably think, well, I'm not sure I can trust this information.
No one's refreshed this in a while. Yeah.
And if I haven't invested in it, do I need to follow this policy? And the answer is, of course, you do. But you could, if you can then work with your internal communications or your marketing or your branding team. Someone will have spent a lot of money and a lot of heartfelt time defining a set of values and visions and look and tone for your organization. So you don't need to do it again for your intranet. You just put it into your intranet governance that content you create is in line with this thing here. So that, it makes it sound like I'm really lazy. I like intranet governance because I just steal everyone else's policies, which is broadly true. But it's not. No,
that's actually kind of that's the common way to approach a lot of it, though. Now is that if there's anybody watching, that's Brent and new to the space. There are so many different community resources that are out there, and we share those components, we share those policies. So there's nothing wrong with that. We need different wording to say to steal those policies from it. Like I know we've all used that
Leverage.
phrase, right? We've leveraged. They've been shared. We've been on the receiving end of shared policy. I don't know. There's a way to. There's
This
a
could get
marketing.
really bad.
Matthew, help me out. There's an internal comms way of phrasing that to make it like it's not the word steal, but yeah, repurpose for our internal needs.
But it's
I
not
know.
really repurposing because you're all within the confines of that organization.
But
right?
the point is, right? But there's my point was that there's a community aspect to all of this now that you can go and leverage, and that's part of what really has strengthened. I mean, with SharePoint's history, so much of this solutions is that when somebody out there in the world does something within your industry of your company size, there are others. There's data. There's best practices. There's guidance shared out there from the community, so you never have to start from scratch. There are people you can talk to. There are SharePoint therapists that are / consultants that are there. They're by the phones waiting to talk to you now. All now.
I think you're absolutely right, because it's the two perfect worlds come together, because SharePoint people are natural sharers. You know, if you get SharePoint and you love it, or it's a love-hate relationship, but you veer on the love side. When you meet someone else that can talk avidly about it and the positives of it, then you do share your things. And I think then when you put an intranet on top, intranet people are people. There's a lot of people there, but that's what they are, because they do their role to make other people's work life and so lives better. And and that's why I love working in I loved working with SharePoint on an intranet, because in an organization, and I would recommend this to anyone that's starting out on an intranet or trying to get their intranet on a shape, is just to build that in-house community of like-minded people. In previous lives, we've called them champions. I know we use that phrase a lot, but they're those people that it's really lovely when you can show someone, they come in and they say, "Oh, I'm not a tech person. I can't build websites, blah 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 blah," and you say, "You don't need to be. This is as close to Lego as you can get. You take that bit and you clip it on here, and you change some bits here."
Mm-hmm.
And then they step back, and you can just see that they're really proud of what they've achieved. And then that's lovely for me. That's lovely for them. But then they start to get the comments from the people in their team, like, "Oh, you've made it so much easier. I can access these files." And that there's a secret ulterior motive to that, because if you can catch them in on the intranet, and they can say things like, "Oh, do you know what? SharePoint's easy to use." Then someone will come along to them and say, "Right, now we want you to use Microsoft Teams." And they'll go and they'll use Teams. They go, "Oh, this reminds me of something." We go, "Oh, this is the same product." Obviously, we know there is some quite subtle differences between communicating and collaborating, but it's a real way of getting more people into that Microsoft 365 universe that we all seem to work in these days.
Question. I feel like I'm hogging the question space. So if Ragnar or Christian have something else, feel free. But when I was still consulting and I would go on to client sites and do like deployment planning, and I would meet with some of the principal departments and ask them, certain questions from every department to kind of get a feel. So when you're helping your company figure out, okay, it's time to refresh this intranet. It's gotten a little clunky or messy or cluttered or whatever. What are the questions? Like mine would always be like, for every department, what are the 3 most important things you need to be able to find? And we'd kind of build out that conversation. Do you have like the top 3 questions you always ask to go, okay, how do we prioritize what needs to be on the intranet? How do we make things more findable for people or just a better experience?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Joy. Really, it's from if you break your stakeholders into different audiences, you've got your decision makers at the top. Now they've got some key deliverables they're looking to achieve, and they're probably talking about audit points or visionary actions or something there. I mean, and that doesn't mean that they're not important. They really are.
They're writing the check, so they need those. That needs to be part of the plan, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, sometimes you have those conversations. They've already written the check, so now it's about like, come on, we need to like
ROI
to see this. But yeah, then I think it's you say 3 things. So there's some numbers along the way. So like the homepage. What are the 10 things that every employee should be able to get to from the homepage? And some of those are very specific, but is usually I need to get to the HR system, or I need to book my holiday. Those really like personal things that need to come in. They might not be things that they do on the intranet, but the intranet is just the gateway to them to be able to do it. And let's be clear, they don't need to know that, do they? There's a button, they pressed it, and what they wanted. So I would with each of those like groups of people, so the finance team, the HR team, is what are your pain points? What are you trying to or hoping to solve from this intranet? But also, what do your customers need? What do you hear them when they contact you, when they finally track you down? What is it that they're after?
Okay.
And the hardest part of those discussions, and I'm sure everyone on this call has had those discussions, is when they give you those 15 things. You have to go through and go, well, that's not intranet, that's not intranet, that's not intranet, that's not intranet. But these bits I can come and help you with, because I think where perhaps I was guilty in the past, I'll put my hands up, is that when you've got a wonder product that can do so many things, if you're not careful, you can try to bend it to do all of those things. And I think the subline of SharePoint should always be, just because you can doesn't mean you should, and that's like a real tough sell sometimes for people.
That's like the history of SharePoint, right there. Is that and we've been kind of talking around this, and I think part of what I glean from your feedback, Matthew, your experience is that, I mean, especially now that SharePoint is as an evergreen platform that's out there, and because I hear from customers all the time, like, well, why does it have to be so complex? It says, well, depending on what your requirements are, your needs in your business, it can be very out of the box, simple. The basics are there. You can get up and started. I mean, you can deploy it, be live in a day for a small organization with kind of a simple approach. But what tends to happen is that you then get that live, and then people start asking, the executive team starts asking those questions. Well, we have this concern, or we have this, can we do this? And you start adding that complexity in. And so there's definitely the complexity. What was happening back in the olden times with SharePoint, especially with on-prem, is organizations would do the opposite. They would go in with everything turned on and everything completely locked down. And it was like pulling teeth to try to get them release on things. And so then we're wondering why are end users not in there using things? Well, they can't get stuff done because it's so locked down across the board.
Yeah.
And for those that understand the history lesson too, part of what changed, yes, moving to the cloud, but it also was, and I'm bringing it back around to Viva Engage, it was the Yammer acquisition that changed, I think, the product team's perspective to stop talking day one or first conversation about how you can lock down and control and everything. And they started talking about flattening the discussion, sharing more, having it more open. That should be the default. Have everything open and on. Everybody can use everything. And then go back to like, what guardrails do we need to have in place so that we're compliant and secure in those things? It is just a different approach. But just with all the talk of like all of the things and all the in-depth features that you can do, the parameters that you can build in to make sure if you're in a highly regulated industry, like it can do all those things. But for most organizations, they don't need to have all that heavy-handed governance, and it can be very lightweight.
That was for me really an eye-opener, because I worked at Microsoft Consulting Services in the SharePoint team, starting from 2007 to 2013. And then after 13, I moved into the Yammer team with everybody coming from the Yammer acquisition, people like the current czar of Donald Trump and others. And what we've seen is that my colleagues didn't talk so much about the product, because I was used to have so many deep conversation about SharePoint server and how to run it and how to configure, how to tweak it and how to optimize it. But my colleagues in the Yammer team didn't talk about the product the same way, because there was so much focus on the cultural change and usage and adoption methodologies and change management. And that everybody was trained in ProSci, ADKAR, and this was for me a completely different world, because it was all about the cultural changes. And we were so enthusiastic about how Yammer is going to change the world and the culture. We have invented things like responsive organization, because we wanted to change the way how we're working and how organizations are going to work. And I think this kind of spirit we should maybe also bring back again in the new way of Copilot, because now we're talking a lot about prompting, but we're talking about toolless, how we can change organizations to make them really effective and transformative.
But it kind of goes back to that my same point is like, you need to approach it by, it's almost like I was actually early in my career. I started out early on, I was a project manager and working in IT, and I had a manager that said that I was too optimistic with like planning and things around that, and that I didn't spend enough time diving into why things went wrong. My approach, and I said, like, I'm not going to change that. My approach is like, okay, what's done is done. There's a risk. We have the risk assessment. Like, we have the conversations about what went wrong here. Why are we spending so much time talking about what went wrong and not on, okay, now the world just shifted, the reality is here. How do we move forward of like the next steps to move things forward? And I interpret that like, I phrase it differently now as I'm older and more experienced in this, but I didn't have the words back then. But that you have to have a learning organization. Part of governance for it to be healthy is that you recognize, hey, mistakes will get made or something was overshared or whatever, instead of smacking down the person that made the mistake. What's the value what do they learn from that? But you need to be accountable for things that go wrong. Obviously, I'm not saying that not be accountable for mistakes you make. But let's focus on now, how do we move forward with this? And that's a big part of what governance is recognize what went wrong, make the correction. Here's what we need to do going forward.
I think you're absolutely right. And that comes back to that discussion about the brakes on the car, that actually, how many things have you learned, particularly about SharePoint or any of the other Microsoft products, when you've been trying to achieve something and you failed miserably at it. But on each attempt to do it, you've learned a nuance about something else, or that product does this, or that's what happens if you do this, and you can park that back here or wherever you park stuff, and just say, that's no good for this scenario, but I can think of X, Y, and Z where that could be really useful, and then off the back of that, you then go and have some conversations with people like, that problem that 6 weeks ago I had no idea how we could sort that. Well, by pure fate, I think I might have a solution for it, but please don't ask me how I found that out because it's still too painful. But it's I think, and that's you're right. It's that learning culture, and to come back to governance. If the governance is strong on remember, they're not no's, they're because. If you don't cross those lines, then actually, what's the worst that can happen? You're in a safe space. On an intranet. Your sites are compartmentalized. You've got you should have really good access management. Worst case, you might a site might become available, but it's a bit of the intranet. But that's why you manage that risks in there. Your intranet homepage, there are probably a very few people that can come in and mess with that.
Yeah.
Then other teams below it, you perhaps open that up to some more appropriate things. I'm not for one saying that terrible things can't happen.
I was going to say that I would be very careful with the statement of what's the worst that could happen.
But the interesting thing is, Matthew, and thank you so much for this idea and this inspiration, is that all the government rules and policies, which we find also precious, are created because of failures. Yeah. So if there are, 150 M365 governance rules, then we know them because somebody has made a big mistake in the past.
Right. So the governance policy too could be, it's not just that if something goes wrong and then we stop them from doing that. Sometimes you leave it open. You say, we need to re-educate, we need to train people on this, but it's there so that we're not keeping people from being creative, from collaborating, from getting their work done. And so the answer to every mistake made is not to let's go put more policies in place.
Don't lock it down.
Right. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off, Ragnar.
Yeah. And the thing is that they should not be written in stone, because otherwise it's like a dogma, and then it's difficult. So I'm trying to cultivate a culture when talking to my clients, that we have a culture of having conversations about these policies. So I'm usually sharing my best of M365 governance policies, and we have kind of conversation. And then the goal is actually that they're going to adopt these policies for their own culture, which is an ongoing evergreen process, because then they are their cultures, their governance. Then they are their governance policies coming from their culture, and not the ones I'm just recommending. And then the adoption is higher. So it's all about adoption, change management. And it does make sense that we just share, we are so smart and we share with you best policies. No, it needs to be adopted from the company, because then it's going to be accepted, and then it can really make an impact and a change.
We talk a lot about the like that governance body that goes and that has those conversations, and a lot of the that having that committee that's out there and what they do, and that's something again where when I'm consulting, I provide that guidance to customers of you should have this body. Who's involved in that? It's like, look, here's different things. Here's ideas. You still need to go put this together. But the point is that I would say at the bare minimum, a monthly gathering where you're talking about, okay, what are the policies? What's the data that we see? The violations of these rules? What do we need to do? Is the right thing that, hey, we clearly need to educate our users more on this area? or hey, we're too restrictive here. We have these requests come
Exactly.
in. I mean, you're having those as a conversation.
But
So
Evergreen.
then, and you have end users who are represented. You have stakeholder organizations that are represented for that. You have the conversations. Sometimes those meetings can be very short because there's no new major requests or they've been handled. There's no major problems. It's rare when they're that short, but it could be like 15, 20 minutes, go through the agenda. Okay, we're good. We'll see like next month. Usually there are heavier topics. There's concern from the legal team about the classification of records in this department that we need to do something different. And, and then you have the input from all of those people, and the end users that can be there and participating could say, hey, that I understand the further lockdowns for those reasons. We're going to have to work around that. One of the things I say, and Ragnar and Joy, you hear me say this all the time, is that the more you involve people in the process, the more the people will support the process.
Yes.
So if it's an open, transparent process, they'll get it. They may not agree with the decisions that you make in that body, but if it was given full weight, discussion, transparency, they will be accepting of the result.
Okay.
Well, sorry,
comments.
Yeah.
Go, Matthew. You're the guest.
I was just going to say, from my previous experience, that's why intranet governance is such a magical thing, because you do have that committee. I like to call them like a forum, because actually it's bringing together people with a common purpose, but from very different backgrounds. So you will have someone from IT there with the technical point. But then you'll have someone like me, who's like the intranet manager, is the advocate for innovation, has been watching YouTubes and stuff, and like, oh, look at these fantastic things that they could do, and the IT person's like, oh. But then you've got your champions or your intranet leads from every part of the business there. So you have someone from finance, you have someone from customer services, someone from HR. And then actually, you'll probably find that the topic you're discussing about, they will all approach it from a different angle. And the legal representative might be qualified to give you some thoughts on what that might be, or the human resources person might be able to give you some ideas of the values of the organisation and why that would be like that. So I think from that forum, you might not necessarily take a fully baked solution, but what you're taking is a challenge and some really robust ideas on how you could probably solve that. And that's why I think I really love it in this part of the ecosystem, because it's just so collaborative.
Yeah. Well, my feedback on that, and I love that you talk about, it's not a no, it's a because. Because if I don't think a rule makes sense, I have a really hard time following it. And I will let everyone around me know, this is stupid, this is dumb, what's going on? But governance. If you're telling me, Joy, you can't do it that way because maybe
it's stupid. That's the words you just used. So that's the language I'll use. Joy, what you just suggested is really stupid. No, you probably be a little more selective with your wording, but yeah.
But I love the conversations between you and your inner rebel, Joy.
Depends on who it's with, right? If it's with my CEO, no, it would be just like that.
Yeah.
But if we can have that conversation and say, because there's a safer way to do it, because there's and if you help the users understand why they can't do it, what maybe seems the more obvious way, like, no, you can't bring every guest into that team because you would be oversharing internal content. We need to do it this way. Or they can't have access to that site because that's got internal content. Do it this way. So having it, like you said, a forum, explaining why the rules are the rules and offering a solution, making sure there's a way to say, hey, but if I can't do this thing, I can't do my job. How can we work together on that? then that collaboration opens up, and it just governance becomes that easier thing.
It does, and I think you've touched on a really important point there, that governance needs to acknowledge the agreed solution, not necessarily all of the solutions, because you can solve one problem and cause several others.
Right.
You might say we don't do this because, but we then don't want people to go off and say, well, I'll do it this way, I'll do it this way, I'll do it this way, because then governance has ungoverned itself. Must be mindful of that.
When you start the conversation, when somebody comes in and asks for whatever the request is, if you start the conversation by like, well, what are you trying to accomplish? And so often you can redirect them towards well, this is the way that we do this. This is why, for these reasons, that, and like, oh, okay, I get that. I might need to take an extra step than we used to, but we're doing it so we're compliant, we're secure, we're all these things.
Or we don't get
I get
sued.
that. Right. Little things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know that we're at time, and Matthew, really appreciate you being a guest on the series.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I looked on the YouTube, and like the list of the great and the good that's been on this cast. I was like, oh my word! Gosh, I hope I can talk. I hope I'm not so in awe. So.
Look, bit of frozen there, but
Internet.
all right. But anyway, we need to wrap anyway.
His background matches our theme.
I know the green. I know, that's right.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, and everybody, thank you for watching. And we'll be back next month with another episode. Where, in fact, we're locking down the schedule. We're going to be talking about. I think we're going to talk Entra and governance. So it should be really interesting, and leveraging AI for research and stuff. So it should be a fun conversation.
That'll be good, because I need to know, is it officially intra or ontra?
I've not heard Entra, but maybe the English pronunciation, Matthew, is Entra.
Or it's Latin, isn't it? So on entrance.
I don't know. Or is it
that's
just
how I do it. Yeah. All right.
Thank you again, Matthew.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.